People ask me the wrong question. They walk into my office in Omaha. They sit across the desk from me and they ask, Warren, what should I invest in? That is the wrong question. The right question is not what to invest in. The right question is what to buy. Those two words sound the same, but they are not the same. They are completely different universes. Most people in this world are buying things every single day of their lives. They buy coffee every morning. They buy cars. They buy houses. They buy vacations, clothes, gadgets, subscriptions, experiences. They spend every dollar they earn. And then they borrow more dollars and they spend those too. And at the end of all that buying, they look up at the calendar and realize they are 55 years old. And they are still setting an alarm for 6 in the morning, still answering to a boss, still terrified of being let go, still one paycheck away from total collapse. All that buying all those years and they are still not free. Why? Because they were buying the wrong things. They were purchasing pleasure, but they were not purchasing freedom. They were buying comfort, but they were not buying independence. They were spending money on things that made them feel wealthy for a day while the clock of their working life kept ticking. Today I want to talk to you about a different kind of purchasing. I want to talk to you about the 3 things you must buy if you ever want to stop trading your hours for someone else's paycheck. These are not luxuries. They are not expensive in the conventional sense. In fact, the most important of these 3 things requires almost no money at all to begin, but they are specific, and most people are never taught about them because the system does not want you to buy these things. The system wants you to buy the other things, the ones that keep you dependent, the ones that make you need another paycheck and then another one after that. This is not a conspiracy. This is not a shadowy cabal pulling strings in a dark room. This is simple mathematics. This is economics. The economy runs on your labor. It runs on the fact that you show up every morning and spend your best hours working for something that is not yours. And as long as you keep buying the wrong things, you will keep showing up. So we are going to change that today. We are going to talk about the physics of financial freedom. We are going to talk about what it means to buy time instead of things. And then I am going to give you the 3 specific categories of purchase that have made the difference between wealthy people and people who merely look wealthy. Pay attention. This might be the most important hour of financial education you ever receive. Let me start with a concept I call the purchase paradox. Most people believe that when they spend money, they are getting something in return. You spend $10, you get a meal. You spend $50,000, you get a car. You spend $300,000, you get a house. Simple transaction. Money out, object in. But this model of spending is dangerously incomplete because it ignores the invisible dimension of every purchase. Every time you spend money, you are not just exchanging dollars for objects. You are exchanging a portion of your working life for that object. Think about this carefully. Money is not abstract. Money is crystallized time. When you earn a paycheck, what are you actually being paid for? You are being paid for the hours of your life that you gave to your employer. 20 years of your life, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. That is what a career is. That is what a salary is. It is not just money. It is time. It is the years you will never get back. So when you spend that money, you are not just spending dollars. You are spending the portion of your life that those dollars represent. When you buy a car that costs $30,000 and it takes you a year of labor to earn that $30,000, you have bought 1 year of your life in the shape of a depreciating vehicle. The car will be worth $20,000 by next year. The year of your life is gone forever. That is what a bad purchase really costs. Not the dollars, the years. The moment you understand this, you start to see every purchase differently. You stop asking, can I afford this? And you start asking, is this worth a piece of my life? Is this thing worth 3 months of my working years? Is this worth 6 months? Is this worth 5 years? And most of the time when you ask that real question, the answer changes dramatically. The designer handbag that costs $2,000, is it worth 1 month of your working life? The restaurant habit that costs $300 a month, is it worth 3 days of your life every single month? 3 days that you can never have back. Most people do not run this calculation. And because they do not, they spend carelessly. They spend their lives on things that do not give their lives back. Now, here is where it gets interesting. Here is the purchase paradox. There exists a category of purchase that does the opposite of all of this. There is a type of purchase that does not consume your time, it buys it back. There are things you can spend money on that go to work for you, that generate more money while you sleep, that slowly, then rapidly, replace the income you currently have to earn by showing up to a job every day. This is the secret that the wealthy understand and the struggling do not. The wealthy are not buying things that deplete their time. They are buying things that multiply it. They are purchasing freedom in installments, and that is exactly what I am going to show you how to do. Before we get to the three things, you need to understand the mechanism of financial freedom. I want to explain to you what freedom from work actually means mathematically, because most people have a completely wrong mental image of it. When most people think of being free from work, they imagine a pile of money so large that they could live forever without earning another dollar. They imagine having millions stacked in an account and drawing from it slowly until they die. This is the old model. It is the retirement model. And the problem with the retirement model is that it requires an enormous amount of capital. It requires decades of sacrifice. And by the time you reach it, if you reach it, your body and your mind are already old. You have traded your youth for freedom. And by the time you get the freedom, you cannot do much with it. This is not what I am talking about. Financial freedom does not require an enormous pile of money. It requires a specific mathematical condition. That condition is this: your monthly passive income must exceed your monthly expenses. That is all. It is that simple. If you need $3,000 a month to live, and your investments, your systems, your assets are generating $3,001 per month without any additional labor from you, you are free. You can choose to keep working if you want, but you do not have to. The moment you do not have to, everything changes. Your relationship with your employer changes. Your relationship with your time changes. Your relationship with fear changes. You walk into the office on your own terms. You take projects that interest you, not projects that pay the bills, because the bills are already paid by systems that run without you. This is the goal. Not $1 billion, not a yacht, just a specific number. A number that, when your assets generated automatically every month, makes your labor optional rather than mandatory. Now the question is, how do you build that system? And the answer is the three things. Let us begin. The first thing you must buy is ownership, not stuff, not experiences, not status ownership. Let me explain what I mean. When you go to work every single day, you are participating in a system that makes money. Your employer has a business. That business generates revenue, profit, cash flow. The business grows in value. And because you are an employee and not an owner, none of that growth belongs to you. You get paid your wage. The owners of the business get the rest. This is not immoral. This is just the structure of capitalism. And once you understand this structure, you have two choices. You can complain about it, or you can join it. I suggest you join it. The stock market is the greatest wealth transfer mechanism ever invented. Not because it is a casino, not because it is a place to gamble and get rich quickly, but because it allows people with very little money to become partial owners of the most profitable businesses on earth. When you buy a share of Coca-Cola, you are not making a bet. You are buying a fraction of a business that has sold beverages to human beings for over 100 years. A business that operates in more than 200 countries. A business that has a product so embedded in human culture that people will likely still be drinking it when I am long gone. When you own a share of that business, every single day that business operates, you own a piece of its profits. The company does not ask you to come to work. It does not demand your time. It simply earns money, and a fraction of that money is yours. That is ownership. That is what the first purchase is. You must begin buying ownership of productive businesses. Now, I understand what you are thinking. You are thinking that you have $300 saved, and the stock market sounds like something for wealthy people. But let me destroy that illusion right now with mathematics. Compound interest has no minimum balance requirement. It does not care if you invest $300 or $300 million. It applies the same percentage return to whatever you put in. The difference is time, not amount. If you invest $300 a month starting at age 25, and that money earns an average of 10% per year in a diversified index fund, you will have over $1 million by the time you are 65. You contributed only $144,000 of actual money. The rest, over $850,000, was created by the system working for you while you slept. Now you might say 65 years old is not freedom. It is just the old retirement model with different numbers. And you would be right, which is why the amount matters. The more aggressively you acquire ownership early, the earlier the mathematical condition of freedom is met. If you invest $1,000 a month instead of $300, the timeline collapses dramatically. Freedom does not require you to be rich first. Freedom requires you to begin acquiring ownership and then to never stop. The most important word in that sentence is begin, because most people are waiting to begin. They are waiting until they have enough, until their salary is higher, until life is less expensive, until the market is safer. They are waiting for conditions that will never perfectly arrive, and while they wait, the compound machine that could have been working for them is idle. Time is the ingredient that cannot be recovered. You can earn more money, you can increase your income, you can cut your expenses, but you cannot go back in time and start 5 years earlier. Every month you delay is a month of compounding. You will never recover. So the first purchase is not a stock. It is not a specific investment. The first purchase is the habit of acquisition. You must begin acquiring ownership and productive systems as early and as aggressively as your circumstances allow. And you must never stop, regardless of what the market does, regardless of what the news says, regardless of what your friends and neighbors think. You buy your slice of the economy and you hold it and you wait, and you let mathematics do what mathematics does, which is to reward patience beyond all reasonable expectation. Now, there is one psychological trap that destroys most people at this stage. I call it the volatility panic. The market will go down. This is not a risk. This is a certainty. Every decade or so, the market will crash. It will drop 20%, 30%, sometimes 50%. And when this happens, the financial media will declare the end of capitalism. Your friends will be selling everything. Your account balance will look like a disaster. And your brain, your ancient, primitive, survival-oriented brain, will scream at you to sell, to get out, to stop the bleeding. Do not listen to it. When the market crashes, the only thing that has changed is the price. The businesses you own are still operating. Coca-Cola is still selling beverages. Apple is still selling devices. The economy is still functioning. The price drop is not a reflection of destroyed value. It is a sale. It is a temporary discount on the ownership of productive businesses. And if you can resist the panic, if you can be greedy when others are fearful, you will be rewarded enormously when the market recovers, as it always has. The first thing you must buy is ownership. Start now. Start small if you must, but start. The second thing you must buy is the system. And this is where most people fundamentally misunderstand the path to financial freedom. They think that if they work hard enough, long enough, and save carefully enough, the income from their investments will eventually replace their salary. And mathematically, this is true, but it is slow. It is decades slow, and there is a faster parallel track that most people completely ignore. That track is income from systems you build or own. Let me define what I mean by a system. A system is any mechanism that generates income without requiring your direct, continuous labor. Notice what I did not say. I did not say it requires no labor at all. Building a system requires enormous amounts of labor up front. But the critical distinction is that the labor is front-loaded. You work hard once you build the system, and then the system runs. It generates income whether you are working or not. Let me give you simple examples. A business that you own, but that is managed by other people, is a system. A piece of software that solves a problem and can be sold 1,000,000 times without additional production cost is a system. A website that earns advertising revenue around the clock is a system. A book, a course, a set of templates, a piece of media that can be sold or licensed repeatedly is a system. Every dollar of income that enters your life without requiring your direct labor at that specific moment is income from a system. And here is the economic truth that most people never fully grasp. Systems scale. Labor does not. When you sell your labor, your income is fundamentally capped by your hours. There are only 24 hours in a day. You cannot sell 25. You cannot sell 30. No matter how valuable your hour becomes, you will always hit the physical ceiling of time. But a system has no such ceiling. A piece of software can serve 1,000 customers simultaneously. A video can be watched by 1,000,000 people at once. A book can be read by 10 million people, and the author's time requirement is the same as if only one person read it. Systems break the linear relationship between labor and income. They make your income exponential while your effort remains finite. But I want to be very clear about something, because this is where people get confused and end up wasting years. Building a system is not easy. It is not passive in the beginning. The word passive income is perhaps the most misleading phrase in financial education, because it implies that you can generate money without serious effort. That is not true. What is true is that the effort is displaced in time. You work intensely now. You build the system now. And then if the system is well constructed, the income becomes passive later. The farmer does not get to rest during planting season. The farmer works exhausting hours in spring, and then in autumn the harvest comes. And the following year and the year after that, if the land was cultivated well, the harvest comes again. This is the model. The question is not whether you are willing to receive passive income. Everyone is willing to receive passive income. The question is whether you are willing to do the planting, and most people are not. They want the harvest without the planting season. They want the income without building the system. This is why most people remain employees for their entire working lives. They avoid the hard work of construction because the payoff is delayed and uncertain, and instead they choose the easy certainty of a weekly paycheck. But the weekly paycheck is a trap. It is comfortable, but it is a cage. The second thing you must buy with your time more than your money is a system. Something that generates income independent of your direct hourly presence can be small at first. In fact, it should be small at first. The goal in the beginning is not to replace your income. The goal is to prove the concept, to build something, anything that earns $1 while you sleep. Once you have earned that first dollar passively, something changes in your brain. The possibility becomes real. And a real possibility is the most dangerous thing in the world because it demands that you pursue it. There is a principle I apply to every business I evaluate. I ask one question: would this business continue operating at a high level if the founder or the key person was removed? If the answer is no, it is not a business. It is a job with a business license. A true business. A true system is one that functions without the constant intervention of any single individual. It has processes, structures, and mechanisms that keep it running. Build that. Build it even if it takes years. Build it in the hours you currently waste on entertainment and distraction. Build it while you maintain your day job. Build it on Saturday mornings and Sunday afternoons. Build it until the income from the system begins to approach the income from your employment. And on the day those two numbers cross, you will experience a shift in perspective that very few people in the world ever get to experience. You will understand what it feels like to have options. And options, the ability to choose your next move without financial terror, are the truest form of wealth. The third thing you must buy is the most counterintuitive of all three. It costs the least money, and it generates the highest return of any investment you will ever make. The third thing you must buy is leverage in your own mind. Let me explain. There is a mathematical relationship between your knowledge and your income that most people never consciously examine. When you enter the workforce with a general education and no specialized knowledge, you are a commodity. And commodities, by the laws of supply and demand, are paid at commodity prices. When there are millions of people who can do what you do, the price for what you do is low. This is not unfair. It is economics. The market prices things according to their scarcity. What is abundant is cheap. What is rare is expensive. This means that your income is determined not primarily by how hard you work, but by how rare your capability is. A man who can dig a hole with a shovel earns $8 an hour because there are 10 million men who can dig holes with shovels. A man who can perform brain surgery earns thousands of dollars an hour because there are very few people who can do that. The difference is not effort. The surgeon may actually work fewer physical hours than the laborer. The difference is the rarity of the skill. Now here is where it gets interesting. For our purposes, the most highly compensated capabilities in the modern economy are not the most technically complex. They are not the most physically demanding. The most highly compensated capabilities are the ones that combine different skills in ways that create disproportionate value. I am not the best stock analyst in the world. There are people with more sophisticated models, faster computers, and more advanced mathematics than I have ever used. What I am is someone who deeply understands business economics, who can think clearly about the long term when others cannot, who can communicate ideas with enough clarity and conviction to attract capital, and who can make decisions under uncertainty without being paralyzed by fear. No single one of those capabilities is extraordinary in isolation, but in combination, they create something that is genuinely rare, and rare things command rare prices. Your investment in knowledge is not just an investment in information. It is an investment in leverage. When you deeply understand something that other people do not understand, you can identify opportunities that are invisible to everyone else. You can make decisions with more confidence. You can command prices for your services that reflect the rarity of your understanding rather than the commodity price of your labor. And unlike physical assets, knowledge cannot be taken from you. You cannot be taxed on it. It does not depreciate. It does not require maintenance fees or insurance. It compounds silently and invisibly. And at some point, the accumulation of knowledge reaches a threshold where it begins to generate income and opportunity in a way that appears effortless to outsiders. This is what I mean by buying leverage in your own mind. I'm not talking about reading self-help books that make you feel good for an afternoon. I'm not talking about collecting certificates or degrees for the sake of credentials. I'm talking about going so deep into a subject that matters so completely, so obsessively, that you emerge on the other side knowing things that almost nobody else knows. I spent years doing almost nothing but reading financial reports, annual reports, proxy statements, balance sheets, historical price data, economic histories. I read 500 pages a day, and I still do. Most people find this unthinkable. They say they do not have time to read. But let me tell you what reading gives you. Every page you read is a loan from someone who spent decades accumulating experience. When you read the biography of a great investor, you are downloading decades of hard-earned understanding in a matter of hours. You are borrowing the most expensive lessons someone else ever paid for. Time in the marketplace, mistakes, wrong bets, missed opportunities, recovered disasters. All of that experience, all of that wisdom transferred to you for the price of a book and a few hours of attention. There is no investment anywhere in the world with a better return per dollar. But knowledge alone is not leverage. Knowledge must be combined with communication to become leverage. I want to talk about this specifically because I believe it is the most undervalued skill in the world of financial independence. When I was young, I was terrified of public speaking, genuinely terrified. I would become physically sick at the prospect of standing in front of a group of people and presenting an idea. I recognized early that this was a problem because no matter how good my ideas were, if I could not communicate them clearly and persuasively, I could not attract partners, could not attract capital, could not persuade businesses to sell to me at fair prices, and could not build the relationships that compound over a lifetime into enormous networks of trust and opportunity. So, I took a public speaking course. I practiced relentlessly until the skill became natural. And I will tell you something, that investment in the ability to communicate more than any stock I ever bought, more than any company I ever acquired, has been the single greatest contributor to my ability to compound wealth. If you can write clearly, if you can speak persuasively, if you can explain complex ideas in simple language, you can do things that most highly intelligent people cannot do. You can raise capital. You can lead teams. You can sell ideas. You can build trust across enormous distances. Every great business transaction I have ever been involved in began with communication, not analysis, not models, communication. Two people talking, one of whom was able to express their thinking clearly enough that the other person wanted to be involved. The ability to communicate is leverage on every other skill you possess. Without it, your intelligence stays inside your head, where it cannot create value for anyone, including yourself. So when I say buy leverage in your own mind, this is what I mean. By deep, specialized knowledge in a domain that creates genuine value. By the ability to communicate that knowledge with clarity and persuasion. And by the judgment to know where and when to apply what you know, which is the rarest form of intelligence of all. This is not a fast investment. It is not a purchase you make once and then forget about. It is a lifetime project, but it is also a project that begins paying dividends almost immediately and that never stops compounding for the rest of your life. Now, I want to bring all three of these purchases together because understanding them individually is not enough. You have to understand how they work together because together they create something that none of them can create alone. Here is the model I want you to hold in your mind. Think of your financial life as an engine. At the moment, most of you are running on a single cylinder. That cylinder is your labor, your job, the income that requires your hourly presence. One cylinder works, but it is inefficient. It is fragile. If that one cylinder breaks down, the engine stops. The machine of your financial life seizes. Now imagine adding a second cylinder. That is the ownership you have been quietly accumulating. Every share of stock, every unit of an index fund, every fractional piece of a productive business that you own and that earns money independently of your effort. This second cylinder does not run very loudly at first. In the beginning, you barely notice it, but it never stops running. Day and night, weekday and weekend, while you sleep and while you are sick, it keeps turning. And as the years pass, the second cylinder gets larger. The returns compound, the dividends reinvest, the positions grow, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, at first, the noise from the second cylinder begins to approach the noise of the first. Then imagine the third cylinder. That is your system, the business, the digital product, the scalable income mechanism that you built with front-loaded front-loaded labor and that now runs with minimal ongoing intervention. This cylinder can grow faster than ownership because it is not limited by the starting capital. You can deploy a well-built system, can generate income that far exceeds what any reasonable investment portfolio could generate from the savings of a middle-income worker. The system cylinder can grow exponentially if the underlying idea is sound and the market is large. And now the fourth cylinder, which is the leverage of knowledge and communication. This one is different from the others. It does not generate income directly. What it does is it amplifies everything else. Deep specialized knowledge makes your ownership decisions better. It helps you identify the best businesses to own and to avoid the catastrophic mistakes that wipe out decades of compounding in a single bad year. Your knowledge makes your systems more valuable because systems built on genuine expertise are harder to copy and command higher prices than systems built on generic information. Your communication skills attract partners, capital, and opportunities that would otherwise flow to someone else. The fourth cylinder does not replace the others. It makes all of them run faster. When all four cylinders are running together, you have an engine of a completely different order of magnitude from the single-cylinder machine that most people run their entire lives. And the most beautiful part of this is that you do not have to build all four simultaneously. You build them sequentially. You begin with ownership because it requires the least time and can start with the smallest amounts of money. You begin quietly acquiring small pieces of productive businesses, and you keep adding to those positions without interruption. While that is running in the background, you start building your knowledge base, not randomly, with intention. You pick the domain you intend to master, and you go deep. You read, you study, you practice, you fail, and you learn from the failure. While your knowledge grows, you begin designing your system. You observe your domain for the problems that need solving, the needs that are not being met, the efficiencies that are waiting to be captured. You build a small version of the system, you test it, you refine it, you scale it if it works, or you abandon it quickly if it does not, and try again. This is not a straight line. It is not a clean process. There will be false starts and wasted efforts and years that feel like nothing is moving, but this is exactly how compounding works in every domain. The early period looks like nothing is happening. The graph is flat, and then without warning, it is not flat anymore. It bends upward, and once it bends upward, it bends faster and faster because all three purchase categories are reinforcing each other. Your ownership generates returns that fund your system expansion. Your system generates cash flow that accelerates your ownership acquisition. Your knowledge improves both, and your communication skills open doors that make everything possible at a larger scale. Let me address the most common objection I hear when I talk about this framework. People say, "Warren, this is fine for people who have extra money and extra time, but I am living paycheck to paycheck. I work 60 hours a week. I have no savings. I have no time. What do I do?" And to those people, I say, I hear you, and I want to tell you that this is not an excuse I am dismissing. The scarcity trap is real. When you are financially fragile, your brain is running in survival mode, and it is genuinely harder to think about the long term when the short term is threatening. But I also want to tell you something uncomfortable. The fact that you are in that situation makes it more urgent to start, not less, because every month you delay is a month the compound machine is not running. Every month you delay, your single cylinder becomes more worn, more fragile, more dependent on circumstances you cannot control. I do not expect you to invest $1,000 a month when you are barely making rent. I expect you to invest $10 a month, then $20, then $50. The amount is not the point. The habit is the point. The decision that this is a priority is the point. And on the knowledge side, there is no financial barrier at all. Books are nearly free. Libraries are free. The internet is free. The raw material of the fourth cylinder costs almost nothing dollars. It costs only attention and time. And if you currently spend 3 hours an evening watching television or scrolling through a device, you have the time. You simply have to make a different choice about what you do with it. This is not easy. I'm not telling you it is easy. Choosing delayed gratification over immediate comfort is genuinely one of the hardest things a human being can do. The system is designed to keep you comfortable and distracted, and spending on things that feel rewarding right now at the expense of your future freedom. Resisting that system takes discipline, and it takes a clarity of purpose that most people never develop, because most people never clearly articulate to themselves what they actually want their life to look like. So let me ask you to do that now. Right now, before this conversation ends, I want you to ask yourself, what does freedom from work actually mean to you? Not freedom from all activity. I do not know anyone who genuinely wants to do nothing, but freedom from the compulsory sale of your hours. Freedom from the alarm at 6 loud in the morning that goes off because you have to go somewhere. Freedom from the anxiety about what happens if you get sick, or if the company downsizes, or if the industry changes. What would that freedom mean for your relationships? What would it mean for your health? What would it mean for the things you care about but never have time to pursue? Get specific. Do not let this be a vague fantasy. Write down what you want your day to look like when you are free. Write down how much income you need your systems and ownership to generate for that day to be possible. That is your number. That is the specific mathematical target that makes your freedom concrete and achievable rather than a dream that lives forever in the future. Because here is what I have learned in 90+ years of observing human behavior and financial outcomes. The people who achieve freedom are not the people with the highest incomes. They are not the people with the most talent or the most connections or the most luck. They are the people who decided specifically what they wanted, built a clear plan to get it, and then refused to stop, regardless of how long it took or how many times the path went wrong. Let me bring this to a close with something I think about often. Imagine two rivers. Both rivers start at the same elevation. Both receive the same amount of rainfall, but one river flows through open country, moving forward, picking up volume, cutting channels deeper as it goes, until it becomes a powerful force that shapes the landscape around it. The other river gets dammed at its source. The water has nowhere to go. It fills up behind the barrier. It sits. It becomes stagnant. It evaporates. The only difference between those two rivers is whether the water was allowed to move. Your money is like that water. Your time is like that water. Your knowledge is like that water. If you dam it up, if you keep it locked in a paycheck that disappears every month on expenses that do nothing for your future, the water stagnates. But if you direct it into the 3 channels we talked about today, if you start buying ownership, building systems, and accumulating knowledge and the ability to communicate it, that water begins to move slowly at first, then faster, then with a force that you could not have predicted from where you stand today. The current of compound ownership will carry you further than your effort alone ever could. The systems you build will keep generating even when you stop pushing, and the knowledge you accumulate will give you an edge that no market crash and no economic change can ever fully take away. Most people spend their entire working lives being the river that is dammed. They sell their flow hour by hour, day by day to someone else, and they wonder why they never go anywhere. The dam is the belief that your labor is your only asset. It is not. You have 3 other currencies. You have capital, however small. You have time outside of work hours, and you have the capacity to learn and build. Invest those 3 currencies in the 3 purchases we discussed today. Buy ownership, buy a system.